The senses are like a mirror. Turned outward, they reflect the outside. Turned inward, they reflect the pure light. By themselves, the senses are innocent, but when allowed to turn outside, they attract everything and transfer those messages to the mind, making it restless. Turned inward, they find peace by taking the form of the mind itself. Okay, everybody, let's figure out the fifth limb of yoga, Pratyahara. So you've been to a few or maybe many yoga classes and you are hooked. Somehow you feel better, kinder, more connected to yourself and those around you. Your friends view you as a hippie now, and your parents, well, they think it's a phase. Regardless, when you are on your mat, you are home. Yoga teachers and students, come learn how yoga can help you navigate the daily grind, breakups, your anxiety from a place of clarity and compassion. Welcome to the Modern Yogi Podcast, hosted by me, Laura Siljander. Misfits, earthlings, yogis, take a deep breath, check in to see how you're doing, body, mind, and soul, because you have arrived. Okay, welcome back, Modern Yogis. So glad you are here. Really want to congratulate you for actually taking time out of your day to devote to your yoga practice, and not in just the asana way, not even in just the pranayama, the breath, not even in the meditation realm. You are here for svadhyaya, your self-study. You're here to learn more about the practice and how it can help you on a daily basis. So people think yoga, they're like, it's stretching and breathing and stress relief, and it is, but it's also this whole other side of how we don't practice yoga to be better at yoga, but we practice to be better at our life. How to suffer less. So just glad you're here, glad you are reaching into your self-discipline, that tapas, and you're doing it. So welcome to the show. We are in the 8 Limbs of Yoga by Patanjali series. We are on limb number 5, Pratyahara. But before we go there, just a really warp speed review. So Patanjali, we don't know Patanjali was one person or a group of people, but he or they wrote the Yoga Sutras. Yoga means to unite. Sutras mean thread. So a beautiful way to view the Yoga Sutra lessons or the 8 limbs of yoga in general are like this. If you think about a necklace or a mala necklace, and you think about the thread that hold the beads together and that goes around your neck, so think about the thread being all the Yoga Sutras, and whatever lesson really speaks to you, whether that's a certain part of a limb or an entire limb of yoga or something else in the Yoga Sutras, if you decide to read it for yourself, because there's a lot in there. What lessons do you really resonate with? What lessons do you want to bring into your everyday life? That's the little bead that you can put on your thread. So it's a really interesting way to look at this. So that's what kind of makes, there's a lot of things, but that's what makes yoga not a religion, which confuses a lot of people. It's take what works for you. At least that's how I'm going to give it to you. It's not meant to be, if you do this, like you're going to hell. There's not that in yoga. Some people get kind of confused that yoga is a religion. It's not. At least not what I'm presenting to you today. We've got Patanjali wrote this book, and out came the 8 limbs of yoga. So we have the first limb, which are the Yamas. So typically known as social ethics or restraints, but I like to call them more regulations, things that you just need to regulate. Make sure that, they're okay. Like we regulate not screaming the F word when we're around a bunch of people or around kids, right? Where we regulate what we're going to say. So some of the examples of the yamas were ahimsa, so non-harming, satya, living that really truthful lifestyle, telling the truth. We've got asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha. So please go back and listen to all of those if you're forgetting what they are. It's been a while, I know. The second limb are the niyamas, known as observances, but I like to think about how it's how to treat and nourish myself, ourselves. So an example could be saucha, it's cleanliness of the body, of your body, mind, and environment. There are things like tapas, self-discipline, going to your yoga mat and doing your pranayama practices, your asana practices, and your meditation practices on a regular basis because you need that self-discipline to do that. And there's also svadhyaya, self-study. So again, I've got an episode on each of those. And then we moved into asanas, so moving the body, the postures. Asanas should be firm but relaxed. So if you find yourself really straining in a yoga class, Patanjali says instead of like pushing through, you're supposed to actually back off. It's not boot camp. It's not cardio. It's not a HIIT workout. The way Patanjali presents asanas is supposed to be firm. So you can feel your muscles engaged, but relaxed, so in control. Now, last week we went over pranayama or breathing techniques or breathing regulation. That was pretty rad. Now we're moving on to the fifth limb of yoga. And I will tell you, these last four limbs are a lot less concrete as the first four. Like you can get on board of like not harming and doing yoga postures and breathing. Like that all kind of makes sense. But these next four, we're about to work into some woo-woo territory. So I don't know if that excites you or makes you nervous, but let's get a little weird, okay? So like I said, they're a lot less concrete. So if you are going to really want to understand this, please keep an open mind. Open mind. And again, if this is a thread that you want, or a bead you want to put on your thread, great. If it's not, maybe it's not right now, or maybe it's not ever, but it's your choice. Pratyahara is what I want to talk to you today. Pratya. P-R-A-T-Y-A. Pratya. It means to withdraw or to draw back. Ahara alludes to what we take in, such as our constant senses of smells, maybe taste, if you just ate something, different things that you touch, a lot of what you hear, and a lot of what you see. And that scrolling that's on TV, that's when you look out the window, that's when you're driving. It's so, if you think about it, all of the things that we intake, all of that stuff, the noise, what we're seeing, what we're feeling, we take that all in. Ahara alludes to what we're taking in. And pratya means to actually draw back from that. So we're withdrawing from our senses. We are taking a step back from the outer senses. I read you what Swami Satchidananda said about having a mirror. And shining this mirror outward, we're reflecting all of this outward stuff, all of the cars, all of the people, all of the news, all of the Instagram. It's chaos. It's busy. But Swami Satchidananda kind of talking about how if you turn the mirror inward, we have that sense of purity, that sense of yoga or yuj, or that united feeling. If you listen to my Spiritual Jelly mini-series, it's turned inward towards our soul or our holy space inside. It's underneath all the chaos. There is a sense of peace, and that's what this is trying to allude to. So stepping away from our external environment and drawing the senses in towards the spine. Now, this can also be our internal chatter as well. So this can be our anxieties. This could be when we feel worried and stressed out or super depressed. Sometimes our internal environment can be just as loud as the external environment. Sometimes our anxiety can be so much louder than whatever's in front of us. So when I say withdrawing from the senses, I mean drawing away from that noise too. Easier said than done, especially for those of you who have anxiety. You're like, I don't know how to do that. That's coming up. So stay tuned. But it's sort of stepping back, not numbing out, not covering your eyes to it. It's literally just stepping back away from the noise. You know, sometimes when you go into your bathroom, you run the bath, you shut the door. That's almost like you're shutting out the world. You don't bring your phone in and scroll on social. You're withdrawing a little bit. It doesn't mean you have totally withdrawn from society. You're just taking a little step back here. And then yoga says, draw that prana, that energy that we're putting out into the senses, out into the world with our eyes, with our smells, with our emotions. And Patanjali says, take that prana and draw it back in towards the spine. Draw it back in. And you're like, why towards the spine? I'll get there. But take that and draw it in. Rather than being like, what do I hear? What do I see? What do I smell? My butt itches, like stuff like that. It's no. Draw that in. Take a step back. This allows us to focus more on our internal environment or our spiritual side. By withdrawing from the senses, by taking a step back with all of our senses, by bringing it in, we have more space to listen to our inner teacher. The inability to do this is a huge reason why it's so hard for certain people to meditate. This is why a lot of people quit, is they can't withdraw. They can't take a step back from the senses. They don't know what it's like to actually try to get that mind under control. It was like how Swami Satchidananda said, the senses are pretty innocent until they start running the show and you can't control them anymore. You just can't even help it. So that's why a lot of people stop meditating, because they're like, I can't focus. Because we're so dialed into our surroundings and our internal chatter, we can't turn it off because we don't know how, because we haven't practiced. It's not easy. And I'll get into this in a little bit. We needed to know what was going on around us to survive. Some of us still do. Patanjali wrote about how our attention to these internal and external senses can block the level of introspection needed to meditate at a deeper level. That we get so distracted by our phones going off, by our loud roommates, by our grumbling bellies, by our anxiety, or that voice saying, this is boring, entertain me. We get so dialed into that it blocks, it veils us from that level of true meditation, true introspection, where you can hear that inner teacher talking to you. He says all that noise, it kind of drowns it out, which makes sense. Our inner teacher is not going to scream at you. Your inner teacher is usually very soft. It only speaks to you in whispers, because we're so obsessed with all of this. And I'm touching, if you're listening to my podcast, I'm like touching my face. Like, we're obsessed with how we look. We're obsessed with how we appear to the world. We become really obsessed with, the latest drama, the latest news cycle, which makes sense. But if we can't withdraw from that, most of us can't reach that level where we can actually hear our inner teacher. So again, Pratyahara isn't about shutting out the world or turning your senses off. It's just taking a step back and making space for you to become an observer of yourself and learn more about your internal environment. So it's not like, goodbye world, I'm shutting you off, like you don't exist. And that's not what Pratyahara is saying. Pratyahara is saying it's important that we try to step back from our phones, step back from Netflix, step back from friends, family, social stuff, dramas, and say, how are you doing? What's happening inside? That's like the first level of Pratyahara. I like to think about this as the action we take right before we meditate. You're like kind of getting yourself in the vibe of like, I'm going to sit down, or I'm going to lay down, or I'm going to walk and meditate. In the beginning of a yoga class, how the teacher will walk in and they will start talking to you, soft voice typically, soft moody lights, soft music. They'll do some sort of opening about who they are, the class, and then they'll start getting into, more of an opening. It's almost like they're taking this step to kind of set the stage for you to start your yoga practice. This is sort of telling your mind and body, like, it's time to maybe meditate and pray, whichever one you want to call it. It's the step before that. All right, I need to start to maybe turn my phone off. I need to maybe face the wall or put in headphones so I don't hear someone yelling or my car alarms, whatever. It's those steps that you take. All right, it's time to kind of withdraw from all the drama of the day. At first, this takes a lot of prana. It takes so much energy to bring the senses inward. This is typically when people fall asleep in meditation or give up because they just can't. They just said, I can't do it. I can't do it. And this is when they haven't even started meditating yet, but it's when you try to withdraw from the senses. And it's not natural in our society to do this. It takes a lot of energy at first. You'll hear me in a lot of my meditations and yoga classes is I'll visualize the building I'm in, then I'll visualize the room that I'm in, and then I'll visualize maybe the chair I'm sitting on or the yoga mat that I'm sitting on. Do you see how I'm withdrawing? I'm making my world smaller. I'm bringing the senses inward. Pratyahara is a state of mind that is so internally focused that your internal chatter, like your anxieties or you're hungry, that starts to fall away a little bit. Or maybe there's a car alarm going outside or a radio playing and you start to hear it a little less. So it starts to dull down a lot. I also want to talk to you about Pratyahara is what makes yoga different from other practices. I haven't seen any other practices or studied any other practices that have something like Pratyahara in it. So many practices, if you think about it, use body to worship, to sing, the breath, the meditation to pray, the ethics. That's in a lot of spiritualities and religions around the world. But I have never seen any other practice talk about pulling the prana in to awaken our spirituality. I feel like that's what Pratyahara is, what makes yoga in a way. All right, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about Pratyahara, and then we're going to go into how you can do it today. Just like there is the stress response, like fight, flight, freeze, was meant to keep us alive, so were our senses. If you don't know what I'm talking about, we have two nervous systems. One is a fight, flight, or freeze. When you've ever felt like you've been in danger, you have either gone into mode where you freeze and can't move. That's what I do. Or you want to fight, or you want to run. There's also this other nervous system that is a rest and digest. So we have both, and we need both. But just like the fight, flight, freeze was used to keep us alive, so were our senses. We needed to be able to see, smell, taste, touch, and hear things to keep us alive. But just like our stress has become too out of control in this society, so have our senses. Because we don't train the senses. We just we don't even think about them as a thing to train. You go to the gym to work out, you drink water to hydrate, but we don't train our senses to do what we want. When you close your eyes and you try to go to bed at night and you can't turn your brain off because your senses are in hyperdrive. We don't train them. That's what Pratyahara is asking you to do, is start to just draw your senses inward, to not let them run the show. So just like the stress response now fires too rapidly, so does our senses. That's our monkey mind. That's our inability to meditate. Just how we need to unplug from our devices, we need to unplug from our senses. So you know how you're like, I've had way too much TV. I've had way too much social media. I need to unplug. Same thing with our senses. We don't think about this. Okay, so how can we practice Pratyahara in the modern day? General mindfulness of your senses is where we start. Literally labeling I feel hungry in your head helps. I feel thirsty. That is too loud. The sun is bright. Just labeling how you are feeling with your senses is a place to start. To become aware that you're even sensing at all, because it's so automatic. We don't even think about us drawing out our senses or putting our senses out there, putting our prana out there. So noticing that you even have senses at all the time, helps. Another way to try to practice Pratyahara is becoming an observer of when a sense is starting to distract you. So let's say you're like, all right, I'm going to meditate, or hey, I'm going to go to sleep, or I want to take a shower and just kind of practice this Pratyahara thing. Becoming observers what's distracting you is really helpful. A very common one is when you sit down to meditate, the list in your head of what you should be doing happens. I got to get this paper in, or I got a deadline, or I should go to the grocery store, or don't forget. So become an observer of what's happening when you are trying to do Pratyahara. Are you bored? Just trying to figure out yourself is what I'm asking you to do. And then here is another way, is practicing mindfulness meditations, or also called insight meditations. The chakra scan is my favorite thing to do when I'm teaching my students Pratyahara. Because remember how Patanjali said, bring the prana, that energy, instead of going out in towards the spine? One of the reasons why is because our most prominent chakra systems, energy centers within us, starts from the base of the spine and works its way up. So, and we'll get into chakras more a little bit later, but bringing in that energy. So imagine all of this prana that we're sending outward coming in towards us, making our world smaller, smaller, smaller. Sometimes I'll even imagine like my belly, my ribs, my chest, maybe my neck. I'll think about the spine, pulling in all my energy there. And I'll do this via a chakra scan. So I'll put that resource up for you on my YouTube channel, and I'll link to it in the show notes. Or you can just look up chakra scan, and there are a lot out there. And the last thing, it's Tara Brach, and she's got her PhD in psychology. She's a practicing psychotherapist. She's also a Buddhist teacher. She had something that I really think, she was talking about Pratyahara here, and it's first pausing. When you feel something, you pause. Whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's sad, whether it's great news, is you pause. Typically, when we feel something like hurt, pain, or anger, we don't pause. We want to do whatever we can do to distract ourselves. We want to do whatever we can think of to get away from the yucky feeling. We don't pause. We do whatever we can to distract. Tara Brach says, all right, pause. Don't be so quick to numb and run out of here. Even if you're happy, pause. She says after the pause, to say yes to the present moment. To say yes to the present moment, whether it's good or bad. So you sit down, you're wanting to meditate, you're going to practice some Pratyahara. So you imagine, the house you're in, the room you're in, and then you start to think about this energy that you're sending out and trying to bring it in towards the spine. You breathe and we pause here. And we say yes to whatever comes up, even if it's kind of painful. Now, if you're getting some sort of panic attack or flashback because you have had a trauma, that's a little bit different. I'm talking more about like the monkey mind or the fear of being and hanging out with yourself, but saying yes to the present moment. Pause. Say yes because it's here. And again, this doesn't mean when you're in danger, or like I was talking about those elements of trauma. This is more you're really distracted from meditating. So, okay, we just did Pratyahara, withdrawing from the senses, taking all the sensory information that we draw energy outwards and bringing it inwards, taking a step back, stepping away, just for enough time that we can connect with ourselves and maybe one day that inner teacher that we all have. We can do this by general mindfulness of your senses. You can do this by becoming aware of what's distracting you. You can try doing a chakra scan or a mindful meditation by pausing when you're feeling an emotion, a strong emotion, and just saying yes to the present moment. This is Pratyahara. Please know that this isn't easy. This is why people stop meditating, is because they can't get their senses under control. It's too monkey mind. It's everywhere. So know that this will take some tapas, some self-discipline to try. Don't give up. It's worth it. I hope this was helpful for you. And we are almost done with Patanjali's 8 Limbs of Yoga series. So stay tuned for the last few. All right. Shalom, Pura Vida. Meow. Oh, you're still here. If you'd like a little bit more, feel free to follow me on Instagram at practice_compassion. Or I also have a YouTube channel called The Modern Yogi, which has all these kinds of meditations for beginners and advanced. I've got yoga practices for beginners and advanced, all kinds of yoga practices. And talking about the chakra series, I actually have a chakra series, yoga classes, a class per chakra. So please, if that's interesting to you, feel free to look into those resources. Okay, goodbye.